like Dick.
We are talking Dinocroc. This is a 2004 movie directed by Kevin O'Neill, produced by B-movie legend Roger Corman, and this one stars Louis Mandylor and Charles Napier, two faces that you'll see in many B-movies. So this is a early 2000s kind of CGI monster fest that's more or less the sort of same premise as Jaws. But just in case you need a refresh, the only real difference here, to be honest with you, is the fact that the creature originates from a lab where this kind of company is doing experiments to try and get some type of growth hormone. Inevitably, a crocodile which has been experimented on gets out and escapes and goes into the kind of the local kind of lake area and causes havoc. And from there, we get a group of protagonists, including the kind of the grizzled hunter, the kind of the wildlife expert, kind of like a local man, and the three of them try and band together to try and you know, capture the creature before it can kill everyone. Essentially, you know, we get the kind of the typical kind of beach scenes and then things like that. It kind of follows, let's just say, the basic premise of the original Jaws. What will happen? Go check it out and you can see for yourself. Anyway, so let's talk about what I think works in this movie. This isn't a particularly well-regarded movie, but I have to say I still think this movie has an element of fun. You know, I'm not a huge fan of the kind of the CGI kind of monster fest, and this is a 2004 one, so the CGI hasn't aged particularly well and was probably never that good in the first place. But it still has some fun elements here, and there are some moments in the film that I do think are actually make it somewhat memorable. For example, probably the most memorable one here, there is a character death, and probably the most gruesome death in the movie that I think is quite unexpected, and I have to say is quite daring for a kind of a, you know, made for kind of TV movie ultimately, and I think that was quite shocking. I had watched this movie a long time ago and kind of forgot this had happened, and watched it again and I was, oh wow, I didn't think they were going to go there, and they did. So there's that. It's a relatively kind of well-paced movie. It's kind of quite a lot kind of going on. There's quite a good sequence that involves this kind of lake, which is kind of, I suppose, the most I guess large scale scene in the movie. Is very similar to the kind of the beach scene in Jaws, to be honest with you. You know, we have kind of this Dinocroc going after various kind of people in the lakes, and a kind of heroes scrabbling around and try and get people out of the water, etc. And although that really is a kind of a straight rip-off of the Jaws movie, it's still quite a fun sequence. I quite liked our protagonist. Costas Mandylor is doing an Australian accent here, which maybe you would advise him wasn't the best. Obviously trying to kind of riff off, you know, the crocodile hunter kind of style aesthetic there, but he's still kind of quite a likeable character. As is our kind of our wildlife expert, this kind of woman. She seems very kind of like personable. And Charles Napier is always quite kind of fun to watch, playing the kind of the grizzled sheriff and stuff like that. And I have to say, this is like an almost good. The movie has one of these kind of conclusions to the movie where you think it's going to end, and then it has to have this little extra bit at the end. Now, had it ended on the original, sort of like when you think it's going to end, I actually thought it would have been quite a mature ending. But unfortunately, they kind of have to go that one step further and have it come back when you think it's dead and all of that. Which leads me into the kind of the, obviously the negatives here. So yeah, that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. It would have been a particular kind of mature ending had they kind of just left it. It would have been quite a sensible way to try and kill this creature off, and you know, the kind of the bad guys, the human bad guys, may have got away with it to a certain degree. I think it would have been more mature. They don't do that, so that ends up being somewhat typical. The plot is just like Jaws, more or less. I mean, it's kind of almost a carbon copy, to be honest with you. So I always think when this is like written by someone, it's like, written by? I mean, come on, it's just a kind of a more or less a copy and paste, to be honest with you. And then we have someone is written by. It's got a few kind of differences here and there, but not a hell of a lot, to be honest with you. And yes, this is a 2004 sci-fi movie made for TV by Roger Corman. This CGI looks particularly kind of cartoony by today's standards. I mean, think Mortal Kombat, Annihilation kind of level of CGI here. It ain't good. And I suspect even when it was released in 2004, it probably was still kind of somewhat kind of shoddy, even kind of back then. The acting from some of the kind of the people isn't particularly kind of strong, and I have to say our main guy, our main kind of like protagonist, the male lead, not Costas Mandylor, he's more of a supporting character, I have to say is a pretty, he's not bad, but he's a little bit of a blank slate, if you know what I mean, not particularly kind of interesting. His best scene is where he's upset by an event that happens in the movie, so I won't kind of spoil for you. But I have to gotta say, he's a pretty weak leading man, to be honest. Overall, I still think, however, this is somewhat of a fun B-movie creature feature. I think this has got quite a low mark on, you know, places like IMDb, but I actually think it's a little bit better than that would suggest, I think. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.